There's nothing finer to me than to be on the water when that sun comes peeking in under that Carolina sky in the Lord's creation, ripping some lips on my favorite waters, taking blind hog adventures with some of my best buddies.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the January episode of Blind Hog Adventures Saltwater Inshore Podcast. I am your host, Corey Furlow. I'm sitting here with my good buddy, Captain Gaston King. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. How about you?
Doing all right. It's been a busy time. It's still a busy time, but it's good, man. Things are going, life's going, family's going. It's going pretty good. How about you? How about you and yours?
Doing pretty good, man. Catching fish.
Hey,
that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for, and to help everybody else catch them too, man. That's the biggest thing. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to come out here, spread a little joy, spread a little cheer, help people hopefully spend a little better time on the water, engage with those they love and care for, and just have a good time. And we got to say we are so happy with how this has gone so far. There's always ways we can improve and things we can do. But thank you for your feedback and your kind comments when we had our dads on last month and those stories we were able to share. It was really cool to be able to live those moments and kind of talk about it. What kind of feedback have you heard, or how did you take that episode, man? It was kind of cool.
I think everything with that was awesome. I mean, just to go back in time, like you said, hear the stories, from those guys and bring back stories from us, from our childhoods too. I think that was pretty cool to be able to do that.
I think so too. We've heard a lot of people of various ages and backgrounds, and whether they're here in North Carolina or wherever else, just hearing those roots and things, and they said, man, it brought us back to our childhood and kind of how we grew up. And some of you guys reached out and said, man, we don't have our dads now, but just hearing those stories around the holidays, we're able to relive some of that and bring some of that back. And I just want to say thank you guys we asked you to comment and to do that and to reply, and you did it, and we are so thankful for that. And with that, like I said, we did ask for listener comments, and y'all came strong with that, so thank you. We had our contest that went on. We had 3 great winners with that, and that was with the 3 gift certificates, one to Salt Strong, one to the Backwater Bandits, and then one to Redline Rigs. And so we hope you enjoyed those, that they were a blessing to you and your family. Don't forget, you guys, none of this happens on its own. People are there to help us along the way, and we want to say thank you to anyone that's a sponsor or helps out. And when I say a sponsor, it's not sponsoring us, it's helping y'all, and it's giving stuff to you through the show, but we don't receive any compensation or none of that kind of stuff. So it's just people that have come along and said, hey, we want to help brighten people's day too. What do you think, man? Just on the, overall, how's it kind of been, or the feedback and different people reaching out? It's been, have you kind of experienced that, different reaching out?
Absolutely. Well, I've got a lot of friends that have listened that are really not even fishermen, giving great feedback. So I think that's pretty cool. Is we're reaching people that you might not even like fishing or have to do a lot in the outdoors, but it's something that people from some walk of life somewhere can relate to. So, I mean, it's pretty cool to hear from people that, aren't great outdoorsmen or whatever it may be, and get that. And, again, thanks to everybody that's helped out, like Corey says. I mean, it takes a lot of people to make something like this go, and the giveaways, all that stuff is great. So thanks to everybody for doing that, and everybody listening, commenting, and hopefully we can build it up for you guys.
That's right. So today's episode, we're starting off our new year. We are looking at, this is going to, of course, drop January 10th. And so with that, with coming in with the new year, don't get us wrong, we're going to hit some trout and we're going to hit some water stuff and all, but there's also some things we kind of think maybe as we kind of move into the new year, are we paying attention to those things, that not just the fun stuff, are we also paying attention to some of the things that come along with that, right? Some of those things, I was actually talking with Andrew Norman. He comes around and since I've got the Key West from Stroud and Son over there, I mean, it's been awesome. I'd never sealed a boat. I'd never had any of that stuff done. It had taken a lot of time, and so Andrew, I got on his maintenance plan, and man, and I know you're looking at new boats. So my boy Gaston's looking at new boats. So but when I got it, it's honestly one of the nicest investments I've ever made, and I plan to keep it a long time. So I got it with Andrew, and I said, hey man, I want to make it look right. So I want to keep it. This is an investment, So how do I make this look good for years? So he recommended a few things, told me what these are my options, and I chose one depending on my budget. And somebody's may be different. So I won't, he has his work. He does nautical perfections, and a lot of people know him. But if you don't, and you're looking at a boat or you have an old boat, I've seen some stuff he's done. That dude's a miracle worker. I've seen some stuff he's brought back to life. I
have seen some Facebook pictures, and yes, it's incredible what he does.
Yeah.
But, if you take care of something, it'll last.
Yes.
It really will.
Yeah.
That goes to oil changes, maintenance, regular maintenance, that goes a long way in keeping a boat running and smooth and keeping you on the water and not being towed in by somebody else.
That's right. And that's the biggest thing. We want to get out there, especially for family and friends, or you're on a charter, you pay money and you go with someone. So especially if you are a charter captain or you're carrying people, whether whoever it is, even on your own boat, you don't want to take that Saturday you have and get out there and, batteries are shot. I didn't change my oil, so something blows, and then it costs us more money or whatever it is. He told me a story though, and that's what kind of brought this up for us to talk about today is your boat maintenance and stuff. So I had to carry mine in for my 20-hour maintenance. It was actually I carried it in December. I had right about 18, 19 hours on it, and so I carried it in. I called over there, Stroud and Son, talked to Renee and Jeannie, and I was like, "Hey, I've got these dates available. Can you find me something I need to do?" So I wanted to kind of still get some fishing in because this is really good fishing time, and they said, "Sure." They said, "Well, let me know." I said, "Well, let me know when you have these times available for my stuff." So they called me back and they said, "Hey, if you can bring it in next Thursday, we can have you done and out on the water by Tuesday." Now they're closed Sunday and Monday, so this is them having it planned. And so I was telling a guy about this, and he said, "Wait, you mean they actually have it scheduled like that where you can go drop your stuff off and pick it up in a matter of days and not months, not sit it on the yard somewhere for, hey, when we get to it, we get to it, or hey, you're next in line." He said, "Man, I've dropped my boat off, let's see, I ain't sure all the dates of duck season, but basically he dropped his boat off, missed the first duck season because his boat was still in the thing, and he had dropped it off in October. Drop it off in October, and they said they should be getting to it this week. So if you do that, you're out of your stuff, man. You're missing some prime time, and you couldn't do that.
And that's one thing too, is you can't always plan when something's going to happen, right?
Exactly.
So for somebody to be able to say, "Hey, look, yeah, we can get it back this quick." Trust me, I've had this boat sitting for quite a while.
Yeah,
just doing nothing. And I'm not on the water. So I understand a lot of frustration with that. So to be able to get it in, get it right back, because right now the fish are biting.
Yeah. So I do want to give them a plug. They are some awesome people, but like I said, if you need maintenance, it's not just about sales, and we're not getting kickbacks. I'm just telling you, if you're looking for someone that does it right, I totally trust. They are my boat dealer of choice, but they are awesome people. They sell awesome products, but they also are really good in maintenance, and they're right there on Highway 17 in Eatonton. You can call Jeannie, you can call Renee. It's called Stroud and Son. They're, like I said, right on the 17. It's easy to get to. So if you're coming from, I know I can make it from Greenville to their driveway at their place for an hour and 5 minutes. So anybody around that's within listening distance, you can get there and drop it off and then pick it up. So just want to give you that plug, let you know there is someone out there that does plan boat maintenance. Not everybody puts it on a yard, and they do it right, and they can get you hooked up. So
I want to say this too real quick. Corey used a lot of country slang. He said Edenton. I just want to go back and make sure y'all caught that part of it.
That's just you know what?
Well, I just wanted to make sure they heard where it was. I don't know what you said.
I got to be honest. I definitely got a face for radio, but evidently my voice isn't always great for it either, because I listen back to our podcast sometimes and I cringe. Because I'm like, I sound like a straight up hick. I do.
Well, buddy, I'm from Elm City, so I already know what I sound like.
Good golly, man. I was like, wow, these folks must love some fishing to listen to me this long. But just wanted to put it out there, man. But if you need boat maintenance, that is first of the year stuff, right? Sometimes before, when I would always get mine done in March. So usually that's when I get my stuff stuff done is about that March time frame before spring kicks off and before after winter fishing. Before it gets really cold, I'll take that time, and I usually get my oil changes and maintenance or stuff done. But they do it all. And so,
winterizing too. I don't, but a lot of people do winterize a boat. I mean, that's a basic thing this time of year.
Yeah,
so it's small things.
And not everybody's mechanically inclined. That's not my talent. I am not either. So I have to have someone to do that, and so I require someone that can work with me. I can be honest with. They're not going to rip me off and take all my money. And I know some people are mechanic, can do that, but that's why it's also on a time frame that I can get over to them. I know when I'm getting it back. I can plan stuff around because at the end of March I'm starting to white perch fish. So I'm not. I know everybody says, "Man, you're just a saltwater dude." I'm inshore saltwater, and inshore saltwater is brackish water, and guess what's in that? White perch.
White perch are fun to catch and good to eat.
And so when I am starting to, so that's my time. So I still plan that too. And so that's one of the few things I can get my little daughter out on the boat, and she'll do. And beginning of April, she'll reel in them white perch, and she can fight them. She has a good time. We troll for them, take some corks and bobbers and troll for them.
Well, really, speckled trout and white perch are very similar. I mean, they school up together. They're fun to catch. I mean, you catch a bunch in one spot. Absolutely.
They're off of points and
structure.
You
can catch white perch on speckled trout lures because they are very aggressive fish.
Yes, they are. I've caught them on 4-inch paddle tails, and I have caught them on the little tiny stuff, and I've caught them on 4-inch paddle tails. So, yeah, man, definitely. So we've covered that. We've covered our boat maintenance. We got our boat clean now. But the big thing is we're still in January. So I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but that's just some things to check off your list, maybe plan out as we're kind of looking. And we asked you guys to comment. And so what we wanted to do, some of the things as we're getting, January is a cold month. It's a month where the fish are migrating back. What are you seeing as this water gets colder, as the big gators are starting to move, as whatever? Where are you seeing these fish now? I mean, we've got December was cold, January. There's always mild times in the middle. But what are you seeing in your mind as you picture January, as you picture cold weather? You guys to paint us a picture for folks to start looking. What do I do with this cold winter trout bite? This winter, because the first day of winter was December 21st. Yep. So as we're in the winter section now, we're not in fall, we're not in spring, you're in the winter part. And most people think, oh, you can't catch fish in the winter. Well, you can. You just got to know where to go. So what are you transitioning to as you kind of move into this time of year, man?
Well, what I'm seeing is trout are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're schooling up, they're getting in tight balls, and they're really slowing down. That's one thing I would stress is the trout, the metabolism is slowing down, the bait should slow down. Really, whatever you're throwing, bounce it off the bottom. If you're throwing a mirror lure or jerk bait or something, really slow that thing down. Have that presentation. Sometimes you can almost crawl it across the bottom, and that may be the only way they bite. But they really are right now. It seems like they're in nice schools, which has been good for us, especially on charters. You can hitch some of your normal spots, some of the deeper holes, and they're sitting right there, and you can kind of pick a couple off. There's also been days where you can see them on the screen, and guess what?
They do not
cannot get them to bite.
Can't buy a bite.
We've gone through some stretches here where we've got water down in 40 degrees, which is extremely cold. And for that too, the trout, they have to get acclimated, especially when it drops pretty quick like it did on us. And that can make fishing very tough. We went through a little stretch, but I think what makes it good on the backside of that is if you look at the weather, and we're coming into that pattern now, is we've got 67, 71, 70 degrees, that kind of fires them back up. They get on those shallow mud flats, the sun is shining down, and they get really aggressive again. So it doesn't take much for them to kind of get out of that winter pattern and come up on the flats and the shoals and kind of feed a lot more. But it's everything you would expect right now, really.
But part of that, I'm glad you mentioned that, is it's not like they have to travel a long time or long distances. So as you're thinking about your winter patterns, as you're starting to move into this, just because the temperature comes up, it does fire up the bite, but it doesn't mean you have to move half a mile. A lot of times you're looking, we talked about it before, find points or structure with a deep hole off of it, and then you still got your mud flats, you've got your food, but all they're doing is coming up on that mud flat. So they're literally coming up 200 yards to sun, and then when it gets cool, they just make that drift right back off. Now they will move a little bit there when it warms up, but it's also a good time for top water. It's a time for things that you can do, and the water temperature comes up enough if it's a long enough stretch stretch. But I mean, a lot of times it's once you find them, just knowing, all right, now if the water heats up, where am I following them to try to find those fish?
Absolutely.
And a time for a bigger bait. Sometimes when the water warms up, you can throw a little bit bigger bait, speed up your presentation, and then when it cools back down, you've got to adapt with the climate. And now I had people ask this question also, so we got a couple listener comments that we're going to go ahead and get into with this January fishing. One of the comments I had and said, hey, will you address what are some ways that if I don't have electronics? I had some kayak fishermen ask this. I had a couple of guys that said, hey, my electronics are down right now. How do what are some tools that you use before you ever get on the water? Now, don't get me wrong. I use my down scan. I use my side scan. If you've got those things, learn them, watch them. There's plenty of YouTube tutorials out there and all that stuff on how to use your equipment. Get with somebody. You may have to, charter somebody. I know, for example, Bud Bishop Montridge and different ones are very good at using their electronics. A lot of these captains are. Gasson, he uses downscan to a thing. He's just really good at finding and depicting these places. But if let's say you cut it off. For years, all I had was basically depth, water temperature, and a basic 2D downscan. But before I ever got on the water, I would look at my charts. Well, how do you kind of, if you're going to a newer body of water, you're kind of getting in some of these places, how do you kind of, if you hadn't fished it in a couple days or a week, and you say, okay, I've got a cold, let's look at cold spells and then warm spells. So let's break it down a little bit. Most of it's going to be cold because we're in January. So let's say you haven't fished. All right, so we all know that this isn't giving away spots. We all know that Gaston is a Pungo River-based outfitter, okay? I mean, we talk about being here.
I don't go far.
Yeah, he don't go far. But let's say Gaston has not fished. You have a stretch come up and you want to go to Swan Quarter, or you want to go to Rose Bay, or you want to go and run over to Leechville, or you want to run over to Blunt's Creek, or you want to run to Dinah's, or you want to run somewhere, okay, in this whole area. Or I'm going to run up to Alligator. Let's say I'm going to run to Alligator River and I hadn't been there, or somewhere like that, or even on the Outer Banks, right along there, going down towards Stumpy Point, let's say. If I'm looking anywhere, what are some things I should be looking for in cold weather that if I hadn't fished it in a while, what am I getting back? Because some guys can't go but so often, right? What are you looking for in cold weather? What really sparks your interest?
Well, I can tell you when I first bought a boat, I looked at I think this is right, GMCO maps.
Okay, GMCO
maps, and it pretty much is from Virginia line to the South Carolina line, and it's the inland coastal water map for North Carolina. And basically what I was doing, so it'll show you everything. It'll give you the names of creeks, rivers, points, but it also shows you a contour water depth.
Okay.
And it'll also tell you what fish are in that area, where it be Spanish mackerel or speckled trout or flounder or drum. So, I mean, it kind of gives you a broad spectrum of what to expect on the water. But I spent a ton of time looking at those maps and just looking to see where I could go, what points, what bays held enough water, and said, the fish should be there. Right now, if I'm looking at that map with nothing on my boat, I would put it down. You're looking for deeper water. Mm-hmm. I mean, these fish, especially when it gets cold, they're going to go down into deep water. But if you can find a place, let's just say 10 foot, for example. Okay. If you find a 10-foot deep hole, and fairly close to that, let's say 50 yards or so, there's a flat that looks like it gets 3 to 4.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're looking like. So when the fish go down, they'll get in these deep holes and it warms up, and that's like we were talking about with the flats. They'll come up on those flats. So if you could find 3 or 4 holes like that and just say, all right, well, these are the places I'm going to fish today and I'm going to focus on, I think you'd be probably successful.
I agree. And that's what we teach on Salt Strong.
Absolutely. And then obviously you need a couple different ways to catch them. Obviously any soft plastic on the bottom to jig that up and down.
You going to use a Ned rig? You ever go Ned rig?
I have never used a Ned rig.
I actually did last year. And
I have heard they work.
On a real finicky bite, I went with a little heavier jig head to get it down in that 10 foot. But I used a light braid line. I used a fluoro leader, and because a lot of people use mono or fluoro, but I used fluoro because it'll sink a little better than the mono did. And I did have some luck. Now I also used those the little slick juniors and stuff for smaller baits that would get on down in their or a Z-Man will work or whatever, but something that keeps that tail up. I use a jerk shad. I use a 4-inch jerk shad or a 3-inch that's a little bigger. I use sometimes a shrimp imitation to get on down, but I get on down there, or sometimes I'll throw a big one down in the middle of them and just hope somebody's hungry and ain't got to go far.
I mean, think about this too. So if you throw a larger bait, and these trout they're pretty lethargic, and they say, okay, well, I can get 1 meal and it's, a 5-inch menhaden, or I can get 1 meal and it's a 3-inch menhaden. When they don't have a whole lot of energy, a lot of times they may go for that 5-inch, something bigger. It's easier, it's a bigger meal, they don't have to work as hard.
A lot more calories for a lot less energy. You
got that right.
It's kind of like Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yes, sir,
you know where to go for the buffet.
Hey, give me that buffet.
So all right, so we got that. Now let's say we've been fishing this. It is we're going to use this example because we are filming or recording. So we've got a string of warm weather coming up this week. We have been water temp in the 40s up to close to 50. What was your water temp today when you went out?
47.
Okay, I was on a body of water around this area. I won't put it out there because people may, anyway, I ain't going to hit people's spots. But I was in a body of water that I did see 49.7 on Saturday, and it was actually kind of cold Saturday. So a couple of days ago, so I saw 49.7. Now, that was up midday temp. Water temp started that morning 45, 46, and I've seen it as low as 43. And then it would get up about 47. But if I'm starting to see now that's all in 50-degree highs. I mean, like highs of 50. Right. We're talking about 70s now for about 3 days. 60s and 70s, water not maybe coming up some. So we're talking maybe mid-50s, hopefully by the end of it, low to mid-50s. Where would that put you? Would you be up on the flat stand? Are you going to push up, look for that mud flat, or that? What are you going to look for off of that hole? Where are you going?
After what I've experienced right now with the cold weather, yes, I'm probably going to go back and fish 3, 4, 5 foot of water.
Okay.
And I can tell you another thing too, and this is, we fished a spot that was 45 degrees. I moved 300-400 yards back in the creek, and it was 47. You'd be surprised what 2 degrees difference does. We did not catch fish in 45. We wore them out in 47. And they can gravitate towards, these fish understand. They hit this water and they say, oh, all right, this is a little better for us. So I think that, well, you were asking me about if you didn't have electronics. You would obviously have to have electronics unless you took a little thermometer and put it in the water.
All right, so what do you think, though, made that water a little... All right, so we don't have electronics. We're not catching anything right here. I got to choose to move 300 or 400 yards back in the creek or forward in the creek. But I'm looking... It kind of looks the same, but it might be a little different. What's something you might be looking for in that creek? Are you looking for certain features? Are you looking for certain are you looking for certain features in the creek? Are you looking for wind protected? Are you looking for what are you looking for?
I would say wind direction probably is a big factor to that. Another piece to this would be any rain, any runoff we've got. If the rain is coming down, you should have a little bit. Where we were at 40 degrees, the rain's going to be a little warmer than that.
Okay.
So you look for fluctuations. We don't fish tide here, but some of you may see that tide is going to change the water temps. So there's a few variables there that you could look at, but I think for us here, wind direction, and then obviously, if the sun is shining on one bank versus the other, that would obviously make a big difference. That's going to be your water level.
So are you fishing when you're looking for warmer water? Are you fishing the calm side versus the turned up side?
I prefer the calm side on that.
I do too. In the wintertime. In the wintertime, I'm looking for calm side because, think about it. And also too, you talk about a fish looking for a couple degrees. All right, when you get in your bath, if it's a little bit cool, right, or you get in your shower and it's a little bit cool, what do? You reach up and you hit that hot water knob a little bit, and that's a little bit better right there. Or you get used to it, right, and I might get a little bit more,
Well, hey, that calm side is a little warmer for us too, most of the time. Really.
Yeah, and so when you look at it, sometimes we overthink things. Sometimes you just out of dumb luck, you'd be like, man, it's cold. I'm going to get these trees.
Well, absolutely. Well, a lot of it is dumb luck. If you're fishing and you look and everybody's on the bank that's calm, okay, well, they may be catching fish. You may go to the rough bank where the water and the wind's pushing everything on it, and they may be there. There is definitely a lot of dumb luck to it. I'm going
to give you a good example.
Uh-oh.
So, no. I'm thinking, because sometimes you said the operative word. You said when everybody's on the calm side, and we all know as wintertime is coming, people are bunching up in these creeks, and you got boats and people everywhere. And sometimes not the best comes out of all of us, and we understand that. I'm guilty sometimes. I do a lot of murmuring. I try not to be vocal too public. But, just come on, man. But as you doing that, so I'm going to give a good example. We were actually in a creek that opened up, and we hadn't gone to the back. It had a little bit of a warmer spell. And wind direction. This is something people can get this off of any app, anything. Pay attention to your wind direction. Now, yes, if it's blowing down the creek, you're going to look for those bends and stuff. But something I noticed was everybody, you had gave me so me and Gaston share a lot of information because we do, right? We talk back and forth. And Gaston had told me, but you weren't on the water that day. You had told me on your charters that you had been doing very well, but it had been I remember it had been I think like a southwest wind possibly or something like that. No, it was northwest wind, and it had shifted to a southwest. And when I went out, it was a southwest. And everybody was on the side that you had talked about. And me and a fellow were fishing. He went with me, and we were fishing. And I was like, man, we got up there, and I didn't want to disturb nobody. So I was like, I don't want to get up in the middle of them. So we stayed back a little bit to a little bit of the deeper water. And I told the guy, I said, that's the wind's blowing against that bank today, but everybody's heard they were catching them on that bank. Now this creek was probably 300 to 400 yards wide, maybe not that much, probably 250, 300 yards wide. I told him, I said, you know what? There's a good dock over here on this right side. We were going down on the left side, and there was a point there and stuff. I said, but there's a good dock on this right side. I said, nobody's over there. I said, but the wind's coming that direction today. It has shifted. I can't remember one way or the other. It has shifted the opposite direction. I said, I bet them fish have migrated off to enter that dock. There's a good hole there. I bet they're sitting off to enter that dock. We were the only boat out of probably 15 we could see. I said, let's go over there and hit that dock. We went over there, second cast now on a soft plastic, brought it across the bottom. It was a cool morning. Boom, hooked up. Matter of fact, I had a bad water bandit on that morning, and I threw it. I was fishing it real slow. Bam, hooked up. No lie. We were trying our best to hide it because we didn't want the whole boat parade to come. No lie, before we got it, I think they heard the shake of the tail. You saw them all look across, and here come the parade. And guess what? People started catching fish. So you don't always go by the line of boats where you are. That's why we're trying to teach you guys, right? Know the whys. Know the simple things. Do the pre-planning. When you're out there and you notice that a whole line of people are there and they're not catching, either A, they may not be biting that morning. You may not have, they're finicky, man. Trout are just finicky. But don't be scared to make them subtle moves with electronics or without it. Don't be scared to try and go away from the crowd. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do, is trying to get away.
I try to get away from the crowd if I can. Man. I
do too. But I tell you, something with the crowds, and we're going to turn directions a little bit here. We actually had a listener come in and say, hey, would you do me a favor, and as we're all getting back in these creeks, will you kind of talk about boat etiquette a little bit, right? And nobody likes to hear about it, but we always have the people that want to kind of mess it up for everybody. So one of our listeners, Captain Michael Daniels, we were talking, and he sent me, and he did a post in the Pamlico Fisherman, and I'm gonna use some of his suggestions. But he is a seasoned captain, tugboat captain, great on the water. The man will help anybody. He even started the Facebook group, the Pamlico Fisherman, to give people information and stuff. And he's just an awesome dude. He's part of my Salt Strong family as well, so I'll brag on him there. But he gave some helpful hints, and we're kind of just going to talk about some of these a little bit, and kind of just some general being a decent human, ethics on the water, helpful tips that we can do when we're out there. And just remember these things, we're kind of going to go through them. And some of you guys, these are going to be brand new to. Some of y'all are going to say, thank you for covering it. And some of y'all are going to say, I don't care what they say, I'm going to go where I want to go. It's my water. And that's just the truth of it. But, hey, we're all out there to have a good time and to hopefully catch some fish. But let's just hit a couple. Is it cool hitting a couple of these?
Absolutely.
And we asked you guys for comments, so hey, here you go. If you give us something we can use and something that we can pass along that we're going to try to do it our best, man. So some things he gave. He said, number one here, when fishing in general, anywhere, please do not go within 100 yards or so. I got my tongue tied, sorry. 100 yards or so in front of another boat. If you see them working that bank, or they're, hitting that kind of stuff, moving in that direction, maybe with their trolling motor or doing that drift, and you see them actively, and you're coming into that creek, kind of give them about that 100 yards, and then also said, to kind of tied in with that, please give other fishermen as wide of a berth as possible away from the area and the side they're casting on when you're running your outboard. Let's just stop right there and look at it. We could do a whole show on that right there. But what do you kind of try to do, man? How do you want people to treat you, because you're working for a livelihood? You have people out there trying to feed their families. You also have people that are like me sometimes, weekend warrior, or not doing charters yet, even though I'm going for my captain's license. I haven't got it yet, so I'm out there trying to hone my skills. How do you kind of do that and give respect to other fishermen when we're getting back in these creeks, man? Give us some tips.
Well, there's more speckled trout fishermen right now than there's ever been. So it's getting harder and harder to do that, especially this time of year. The water's cold. People are trying to get as far back as they can. The creek gets narrow. So it's tough. I mean, I love that. If you actively see someone going down a bank and they are casting, give them space.
Yeah.
I mean, this happens to me all the time, but people will just pull right in front of you. I mean, they can see I'm going, and I'm talking about, sometimes 20 yards.
Yes.
I mean, they'll pull right in front of you and just jump in front of your spot and beat you to it. So that can get very frustrating. Recently, I've had some people, this time of year, I'm off the bank a little more.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm still casting towards the bank a lot of times. Well, I was probably, 50 yards off a bank, and I had somebody cut between me and the bank, and they were doing 30 miles an hour. I mean, just came around a point and just never stopped, and I could have thrown into their boat.
Yeah.
And they just, never put their heads up, never looked at me, acknowledged me, just, it was just another day for them. So, I don't know. I don't know if people don't have the common sense of that, or they don't have the etiquette. They've never been in that situation.
Yeah.
They just say, well, this water's deep enough to run, I'm going to run.
And you got a lot of new people with boats that I may not know, but you got some people that are just, let's be honest, jerks.
Well, yesterday we had, from what I saw, there was a guy, he was kind of tucked back in a cove, and he was catching fish. Well, another boat decided to come in on him. Now, he did use his troll motor, but he came in. It looked to me like they could just throw over top of each other. And they never said a word to each other. I thought at first they were friends, but they didn't say hey or bye or anything. So I kind of figured somebody just really said, hey, this guy's catching fish, I'm going to go over there and do that. If you can cast into someone else's boat, you're too close.
Very too close. That's too close for. Honestly, I like to set my points up. I'm not going to run straight in on a point to fish it, because guess what? You're going to mess it up. So if I'm stopping a good 3-4 cast out and working up to my spot, that doesn't mean I ain't working the spot. It just means I haven't run in on it. So if you run an outboard over top of it, you've basically just shot my whole thing there.
Well, that's another thing too, is if you're fishing and you're done fishing and there's boats around, just take your troll motor and ease out.
Exactly.
You don't have to crank up and just gun it and run out of spot. Be respectful for the people that are going to stay back and continue to fish that spot, and just ease out and then crank up and move on. I see a lot of people, they just crank up and boom, and that shot, the fish will come back.
They will.
We had some areas yesterday that we really wanted to fish, and there was people there, and we just went somewhere else. But if somebody leaves, give it 10, 15 minutes. And you can go sit there. But if you hadn't caught anything in 15 minutes, don't leave.
That's right.
The trout, they may kind of swim away a little bit, but they'll come back.
Or, think about it being gun shy, basically. In other words, they may sink to the bottom and settle or whatever. Yep. So we've actually been on a creek before. This was actually, we were actually at the Todd Willis Open down there, and we were fishing the creek. And a boat came by and gave us plenty of room, but it was great. But honestly, we hadn't started catching fish. And when that boat came by about 200 yards away, believe it or not, It was probably 150 yards. Believe it or not, those fish moved our direction, and we gave it about 10, 15 minutes, and we started picking up fish. So in my opinion, he actually helped us by pushing fish our way. Now, we knew where we were working to, but he kind of sped the process up.
Well, we had that same situation on us as somebody they came along the shore.
Yeah.
And I told my folks, I said, look, they're going to push these fish right to us.
That's right.
Because we were casting to where they were coming, so you knew that when he came in, they were going to move straight to us. They didn't have any other way to go.
That's right.
And that actually worked out pretty good.
There you go. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it don't. And so that's something that he mentioned. Hey, use your trolling motor. I tell you something we ran into. We were fishing Leechville in December, and Leechville gets very skinny in certain places. And you also know out there in Leechville, coming from the bridge, coming up toward the campground, there is, I call it the boat 500, where you've got basically in that one stretch, y'all know what I'm talking about, from the islands back to the next little island by the duck blinds there you will see boats upon boats upon, I don't know, sometimes there's 30 boats in that one little section. If you see or if you get away from them, you see somebody casting, or you see people working the side of the bank, simply ask them. Or if you're back in Blunts, or you're back in Wrights, or you're back in wherever you're at, if you're easing up to somebody, simply ask them, hey man, and if it's narrow, you got to get by them. Say, what side are you talk? What side are you casting on? What side do you want me to pass on? And then that way, when you take your trolling motor, hey, if you got to mess up one side or the other, I'm working this side. How about go on my port or my starboard or my whatever? Yep. Ask them, where do you want me to go? You want me to go off your bow? Do you want me to go off the bow? Whatever. Ask them. And we had guys yesterday say, hey man, if you don't mind, I spotted some out here on my electronics. How about go off my bow? Because he actually had used his power poles and had his nose out. Right, and I was like, okay, no problem.
Well, another thing too is you got people that may have not caught many trout in their life, right? And
That's
then they come in these creeks and see these people wearing them out, and they can't get a bite. I think that makes them, hey, let's see how close we can get.
Yeah.
And those are kind of also sometimes the people that don't fish a whole lot. So it's kind of one thing leads to another there. So it's a little frustrating for sure.
Exactly. So I hope people are doing is, if you've got people out there and let's say you're catching fish or you're having a good time and you've got somebody out there and you see them struggling and they got a kid on the boat, y'all, we're looking at the future of our sport. We're looking at the future of you may have kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews. You may have been that kid on the boat that you saw people catching fish and thought, man, what am I doing? You know what? If you're getting ready to leave, I hate to tell you, them fish have got tails and they're going to move. Why not say, hey man, you may want to try over there, or y'all had any luck? Now most times they're going, but if you see they hadn't done something, especially with a kid, reach out and say, hey man, you may want to try over here, and tell them what you're using. Hey, why not? You're leaving. You're done for the day. I hate to tell you, they're not going to catch them all. More than likely, they may not catch one or two. But if you can make that kid's day, think about that. Sometimes, what would you, it's the golden rule thing. How would you want someone to treat you or your son or daughter or whatever? How would you want it to do? So just try to be a good human. Try to be good about it. And remember, they got tails, they're going to move. And help make somebody's day a little brighter, especially Absolutely. If you're done, man. Especially if you're done for the day. So we talked about ethics. We talked about keeping our boats clean. We talked about maintenance, so you actually can get it done somewhere and get your boat back. What else is a good January topic that we have not hit?
Put me on a spot. I don't know.
I tell you what, January is also a pretty good time to catch some gators. If you're going after, and I seen you in the Dirty 30 Club, so you are a Dirty 30 Club member. So if we're talking about gators, now we're talking about general stuff. But let's say, I'm not asking you to give away no spots or none of that stuff. But I've never caught. I've caught some citations, but I have not caught many. But I've never caught anything close to a Dirty 30. I am a numbers guy, so I'm gonna pick your brain here and say, if you're looking for that big fish, and you've caught what? How many big mamas you caught? You caught some nice ones with your dad. He mentioned it.
Yeah, I've caught a few.
Okay, so he's a humble dude. He can tell you, but he's caught some good ones. Well,
I'm with you too, though. I'm a numbers guy. Big fish are great. Now, if I fish by myself or with my dad, then I'll gear more towards catching a bigger one here and there. But on charter, I'm looking for fish on charters.
Let's rule out charter. Unless they're looking for a trophy charter. Let's say me and you were going fishing. You and your dad's going fishing, and you say, you know what? Looking out here, I'm gonna pick a day, and I'm gonna try to find these type of. When I turn my mind, I want to go big fish fishing. In other words, what are you kind of thinking? What goes through your mind? In other words, with that.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit today. The deeper water, coming up onto a flat. I mean, you know, I've caught big fish in almost every condition with every type of lure.
Okay.
I mean, soft plastic, mirror lure, top water, popping cork. I mean, whatever it may be. And I'll be honest with you, man, a lot of mine is just luck.
Okay.
I'm in the right place at the right time. I've got certain banks that I gravitate towards. But it's, again, I mean, I'm looking at a cove or a point that's 4 and 5 foot deep, maybe 6, and it drops down to a channel that's 8 or 10.
Okay.
So you got a drop off coming up. I mean, points and coves seem to really be the best for me.
Okay. And when you say cove, that can be different with everybody. Just as you talked about my Edenton, when you talk
little
about
cuts, little bays. I mean, I'm not talking about an expansive cove that's 200 yards
Bull's
long.
Bay is technically a half mile long with me.
I'm when I say coves, I'm speaking of, I don't know, maybe 50 yard and not.
You're talking about a good cutting off the bank, wind protected with some structure.
Well, wherever you have a cove or a cut, you've got a point.
Exactly.
So you have to think about that too. But if you notice, and we've noticed this over the past couple years, is if the wind is right, it pushes those mullet to the bank.
That's right.
And it's almost like they run that bank line. So when you have a cold weather that leads up to a warm day, get on that bank. I mean, we ran through a spot, this was last February, where if you were 10 foot off the bank, you wouldn't even get a bite. But we were catching some nice trout on the bank. I mean, just right on the bank.
Me and Jared had that same thing, and it's on a video, and it was matter of fact, it was in January a year ago, and we went same way. It was a point, and that when you talk about a little cove, literally it was a cut in. It went into the bank probably 20 yards. It was a little cove there. It had some nice trees on it, and we thought it was a lot shallower than it was, and come to find out later, because all I had was that 2D down scan and water temps, but what I saw was it was wind protected, and what we started seeing was the wind was pushing the bait down the bank. As soon as they got around the bank, it's like those fish were sitting in that calmer water ambushing them. And so we started fishing that cove, and you literally would almost put it right there against the bank and just let it fall straight down, because what it was is basically a swamp drop off, and where that water had hit that bank, and when that bait almost hit the bottom, boom, it would hit.
That fires me up.
And so that's what we're talking about. We ain't talking about, you ain't got to find these great big expansive coves and bays and stuff like that. You're just looking for these little cut-in areas, and so something that's going to be protected, something that's going to have some structure, something that's going to have a point break on it. Tide lines are really, not tide lines, but the current lines are really good. That area right there where you'll see the current running with the wind or whatever, and then you've got calm water beside it. That seems to be, I always look for that kind of stuff and cast to it, especially right after that point, because those fish will get up in that calmer water out of that turbulence and sit there and look for something to eat.
Well, and you're talking about baits too. The research has been done. I mean, the number one bait to throw for a large trout is top water, some form of top water. But I've caught big trout on top water. I've caught them on a 2-inch voodoo shrimp.
Yep.
I've caught them on a 17 MR. I mean, so a lot of people say you got to throw big baits for big trout. That's not necessarily true. Maybe it gives you a better opportunity, because we did mention you throw a 5-inch versus a 3-inch, and they say, oh, well, this is a better meal for me because I'm not moving, I'm lethargic. So I think there is some truth to that. I'm really not one that does that, because I believe I can catch them on anything we throw.
That's right.
And you have to have, it's what you have confidence in. So I'm gonna throw my confidence baits regardless of what it is, and I think maybe on the first or second episode I mentioned this, but I don't really change baits.
Yeah, I'm
trying to get to a point where I'm throwing bigger baits here just to do the research myself. But hey, if I'm catching fish, I'm catching fish.
All right, so we're in January. Give me your top 3 confidence, or this is where I'm gonna stick to these main 3 baits in the month of January. Where are you going?
17 MR.
Okay.
You want me to give colors?
That's up to you, but I think they'd appreciate it. But I mean, what does it matter? I mean, if that's up to you. I'll give you.
Well, I'm a very open and honest person.
I'll tell what I throw, and I'll give you colors. I don't care.
Greenville Marine makes a grape soda 17 MR mirror lure. If I'm throwing a mirror lure, that's what I'm throwing.
Okay.
If I'm doing a soft plastic, I'm throwing a 3-inch minnows sexy mullet.
Okay.
And then from there, I will do a 5-inch jerk shad.
Okay.
And I'll do the same thing, either sexy mullet or I might even do slam shady.
Okay.
Sometimes that slam shady I had a guy, he said, you have to put this in your box.
Okay.
And for a year, I didn't do anything with it. And then I threw it and I started catching fish, and I was actually kind of sad I had to go back and tell them that they worked as good as they did.
Especially in clearer water.
Yes.
Especially in clear water.
Absolutely.
I have found that is a great color. Your beer run is a great color. But not as much in the wintertime, more in the spring and fall. But I have found in clearer water that Slim Shady color, man, really sets it off like that minute. It takes a lot of it's got some gold flake in it. It's got some silver in it. It's got some white in it. So it's a great color. So yeah, man, that's something.
Well, it's good. It's a good color for clear water.
Yeah.
Which the colder it gets, generally in our area, the colder the water gets, the clearer it gets. Now we may have a big rain that changes runoff and it might get dirty, but yeah, something along those lines in the clear water in the winter is hard to beat.
Hey, that gives you a dark bait, a natural colored bait, and a brighter bait. So that covers your 3 main classes right there. You can carry 3 rods basically. Now, with your jerk shad and your 3-inch, what are you throwing when it comes to like jig head weights and stuff like that? You want something light that's going to flutter down?
I like an 1/8 ounce. I like it to fall slow.
Okay.
I know a lot of people will throw, but I'm also not fishing really deep water. But that 1/8 ounce, especially with that paddle tail, I get a ton of bites on the fall.
Yes.
I don't even work the bait. I throw the bait out and just instantly get tight line and just let it fall. And I will say this time of year in the water we're fishing, I bet 65-70% of all my bites are on the fall before I even reel it, jerk it, or do anything.
Hey, that right there is a pretty good percentage. I would take that.
There's a ton of, but that is also being where the fish are and knowing where the fish are and knowing where to cast.
Exactly.
Which is, for me, a lot of those situations, I'm in deeper water and I just throw it out and let it sink down. But you have to think, a paddle tail, when it's sinking, it's moving.
It's moving.
Curly tail, same thing. To me, if you're fishing deeper water, I think you're better off to fish something that has movement. The jerk shad is good if you want to bounce it off the bottom. But if you're throwing in 12 foot of water, I want my bait working all the way down.
That's right.
Because, the fish will be suspended maybe 5 or 6 foot off the bottom. Whereas when that flutters down with a paddle tail or curly tail or something with movement, I think they're more subject to bite that. It's just a reaction strike.
Well, it's the whole premise behind a 17, a backwater bandit, or anything, right? Any of these baits that we're fishing that's going to flutter down, that's what it's doing. It's got movement on the way down. Mm-hmm. So technically, not working it is working it. I am very bad for feeling like I've got to work a bait, and I overwork bait sometimes, so I'm not always the best. I'm a work in progress with winter fishing because you've got to have patience, Whittlewood old dude patience, and I don't always have that. And so I have really got to learn to let my baits do what they're intended. And I appreciate. I went fishing with Steven and Patrick, and they kind of I went with them with the Backwater Bandits guys, and I sat there and watched. All I was doing was learning, and they went with me, and we went and fished some water and caught some good fish. And that day was a cold day. It was a little bit stained water, and man, just like you say, I was working it too much. I was keeping it up too high in the water column, and I'm gonna tell you, Patrick's a man of very few words, but he's kind of that chill guy, and he was just letting that bait flutter right down, and he'd give it them pops and a little bit of turn, and I'm like, good golly, I'm sitting there, I'm like a dog wanting to stick. Throw it, man, throw it.
If you think you're fishing slow it down even more. I'm telling you, this time of year, you'd be surprised if you really let that bait fall and sit. We've had fish just pick baits up off the bottom. They're sitting on the bottom, and you're doing something else, filling with something, and say, I'll come back to this and pick up your rod, and boom, there's a fish there.
I about had one jerk it out of my hand that day when I was sitting there and we were just talking, and I had it in my hand. Thank goodness I had a good grip on it, and I threw it out there and kept my line tight, and we were just sitting there talking, and all of a sudden it literally cocked my wrist sideways. I mean, it was a good fish that day, and I was just sitting there talking and letting it fall, and that's the best thing I could have done, was just not do anything except keep the line tight.
Well, I had a guy on the boat yesterday, and he mentioned this. He was fishing a soft plastic paddle tail. He was kind of reeling it in slow, and he caught a fish. Well, he mentioned to me, he said, now, if only I could remember what I was doing when I caught that fish. And that really stuck to me. And, you know, if you think about it, I guess maybe because we've been fishing so long, you don't really think about it. But
that's muscle memory.
Absolutely. Even back in the day when we were shad fishing with a dart and a spoon, you throw out and you try to remember how fast you were reeling it, right? So a lot of people's mindsets are like that, especially when you haven't been fishing. But if you can say, okay, well, I was doing this, I was doing that. You know, to fish every day, they may want something different. I can go to the same spot tomorrow and they want something totally different. So there is a lot. It's a lot to keep in your mind and think about. You lose sleep at night.
Well, and that's why they say the 2 twitches and a pause is a good way to start. You know, now how long do you put between the pause? That's up to you what the fish want. Sometimes you do 2 twitches in a little pool. Sometimes, you know, they may want 1 twitch. Sometimes they may want a slow retrieve, let it sink, whatever. On something like a slow sinking twitch bait, I try to count to, I'll do 1,001 in my head, whatever depth that I'm fishing. So if it's 10 foot, I'm 1,001, 1,002 to 10, and then I'll start easing it back in and give it a couple little jerks or something. But now my top 3 is going to change up a little bit from that. My top 3, I'm probably going to fish. Number 1, I'm going to fish. I am a new convert, as I'm sure a lot of you are, because they can't get the baits in, is the slow sinking twitch bait, the backwater bandit. I really do like that style, though. You can cast it a mile. I really like the colors and what's going on. So I'm going to either work. I love an orange in a stained water, and I fish a lot of stained water. But I'm going to fish probably an orange, a purple, or a white. Somewhere in those 3 is going to be my go-to. And I'm gonna, like I said, that's going to be that one. I am the elephants are going to eat great big stuff. I love it. I have found a bait company that I throw a lot of their stuff now. And it's Coastal Brew out of Texas. And if you go on their Instagram, it is basically a wall of nothing but gators, and they got a lime. It's called a limeade color, and it's kind of a little bit of a greenish yellow, and it's about a 5 or 6 inch. It's a 6-inch dart, what they call it. It's almost like a jerk shad, but it's shaped a little different. But inside of that, when you get it under the water, it's got a red flake in it. It's got a little bit of silver, and then it's got that I call off chartreuse looking color, and I love it. And I put a red jig head on it. Now people can say what they want. I put a red jig head on it, and I've got 2 citations on it so far on that red jig head. And in deep holes, when you see them fish stacked up, I will throw it out there, and I'm gonna put a 1/4 ounce on it. It's a heavier bait, but I want it to get to the bottom. And all I'm gonna do is keep my line tight, and I'm gonna pop, and I'm gonna let it come up and flutter right back down. And the tail's got tons of action. I'm gonna fish that. So I'm gonna throw a backwater bandit, a Coastal Brew, and then I'm gonna throw some kind of paddle tail. I mean, it's gonna be some version of a paddle tail, 3 or 4 inch. There's certain colors I'm gonna pick up and throw, and those are usually it. Those still gonna throw purple, still gonna throw pink, still gonna throw some type of green. They got an Intimidator that's black and green and stuff like that. Just depends. I fish so much different water. That's the thing is right. I've got to match it to the water I'm at. Right. So that's what I'm and early in the morning I'm gonna throw a little bit darker shade when the sun gets up and I can get some sparkle on it and that clearer water. I'm gonna switch to something a little lighter and a little sparkle.
That sparkle this time of year means a lot to me.
They can see it off in the clear water.
Exactly. And I think too, even when it's cold and they're slow, I think you're still looking for that reaction strike, and they see that little flash, and I think that gives you a lot more bites. I really do.
You got to think, and the big ones are females, and females love flash and jewelry.
Yes,
that is my 2 cents worth of wisdom right there. For the big ladies, the gators, you're going after flash. That's right. There we go. Probably not, but there you go. But man, so I think we got a good amount of assortment today as we kind of wrap up January. Hopefully we got you out there a little calmer on the water, being a little kinder at the first of the year. Make sure and get that boat maintenance done. Make sure you get up with someone that can clean and get a maintenance plan on your boat. I can tell you, for me, the less I have to worry about maintaining my boat. I'll put it to you this way: when Andrew's done this, he he actually comes once a month and does a quick detail on mine. It's like a maintenance plan, and then every 6 months I'm on his plan to come and he goes over the boat. I can pull it. This is no lie. I can pull it out, and you've seen it. I can pull it out of the Pungo. I can pull it out of Alligator. I can pull it out of Leechville at the dirty ramp there at the campground. Any of it, and I'm talking about the boat looks. I could put it in a parade when there's no brown line around it. There's no water stain on it. I carry it home. I wash it off with my water hose. Put a little bit of a foam cannon on it. Some stuff he gave me. It don't strip the boat. It rinses right down. I rinse it right down. No pressure washer. No nothing. I mean, it's literally 10 minutes. Rinse it on. Rinse it off. And I am done. I'm talking about the inside. If I get blood, anything, I wipe it right off. I mean, if stuff gets on it and hardens, comes right off. I can't tell you. He as long as I can afford it, even if it's spaced out some, I'm telling you, it has been made the most difference. And I know you're going to do that with yours when you get it, because it gives me more time to spend with family. It gives me more time not to have to sit at home and do something when I'm able to do other things. I don't have that hour I had before cleaning up and doing. And with charters, man, that's priceless time. I mean, if you can literally take your high pressure wash down hose and rinse it, that's all I do on the way in. I rinse it, let it run out the back, and I'm done. So it's been a world of difference. And then hopefully we gave you some tips, some ways you can look with electronics and without. We've gave you some ways that you can hopefully key in on some of your baits, stuff like that. And don't forget that GMCO maps. If you don't have it, that's actually something new for me. I didn't know about that. And appreciate Captain Michael Daniels giving us some info. Like I said, if you want to get your stuff done this spring, don't forget Stroud and Son over there. Renee will help you with all your sales stuff. You've got Jeannie, that is their maintenance manager over there, and will get you set up. And she's very good. They talk to you. They're texting you. They're making sure you know when you can pick up and what you can do. I'm telling you, man, they're on it. And so you've got a lot of stuff packed in this one episode that'll hopefully get you going for the first of the year. We've got some great guests coming up. We've got some shows going on with Redline Rigs. So we'll be at the Raleigh show. We're going to be at the Greenville show in March. We've got that going on. We've got a lot of stuff going on. Some really good guests coming up as we kind of start to get the ball rolling and bring in some of you won't just hear us from now on. We're going to have a lot of guests coming in the whole way through the summer and hopefully carry you this right on through. But we appreciate y'all. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you spending your time with us. We appreciate all of our sponsors, and just really appreciate y'all bringing us into the fishing community to highlight Eastern North Carolina and what you have done. And we are just very, very humbled and appreciative, and give all the glory to God, and just definitely want to say thank you. Anything you want to add, buddy, as we kind of wrap this up today?
Thanks for listening. Thanks for the comments. Y'all get on the water and fish it slow.
Fish it slow. All right, y'all. Take care.
There's nothing finer to me than to be on the water when that sun comes peeking in under that Carolina sky in the Lord's creation, ripping some lips on my favorite waters, taking blind hog adventures with some of my best buddies.